Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. When my family laughed at my dreams, I built a fortune that made them eat their words. My dad's laugh is the first thing I hear over the clinking of cutlery and the low hum of the restaurant. It's that same booming laugh he used when I was 19 and told him I wanted to start my own business instead of becoming an accountant like he planned. Only this time, he's laughing because the waiter has just handed him the bill for a table of 14 and my mum's face has gone pale. I reach across the white tablecloth, pluck the leather folder from his hands, and slide my black Amex inside before he can even argue. "Don't worry, Dad," I say lightly, keeping my voice even as my heart thuds in my chest. "Your delusional little dreamer can afford dinner." The table goes quiet in that way that isn't really quiet at all. Chairs creak, someone clears their throat. My teenage cousin taps at her phone under the table. My brother Luke looks between me and my parents, eyes sharp, like he's suddenly realized the game changed, and no one told him the new rules. Mum forces a smile, the kind where only her lips move. "Oh, darling, you don't have to," she says. "It's too expensive. Your father can." "Really?" I cut in, smiling for real this time. "It's fine. Consider it a tiny write-off." She blinks. "Write-off." My aunt pipes up, laughing. "You know, with all her business money now. You should see her car, Patricia. It's nicer than your nephew's." I can feel the tension folding in on itself under the table, like crumpled napkins. For a second, I'm back at that old dining table in our tiny brick house, the air thick with the smell of burnt garlic bread and my dad's laughter ricocheting off the walls. It was a Sunday night when they first properly laughed at me. I was 19, barely out of high school, sitting at the same table I'd eaten at my whole life. Fake wood veneer, one leg slightly shorter, so it wobbled if you cut your steak too aggressively. Mum had made spaghetti bolognese her signature. "We can stretch this for 3 days meal." The TV was on mute in the corner, flickering blue light across the room. "I got into the business diploma," I said, trying to keep my voice casual as I twirled pasta around my fork. "The online one I told you about. Marketing and entrepreneurship." Dad didn't look up from his plate. "Good, so you'll have something to fall back on when this art shop thing doesn't work." I swallowed. "It's not just an art shop. It's an online brand. Stationery, planners, prints, digital courses eventually. There's real money in it, Dad. People are making a living from this stuff." Luke snorted into his garlic bread. "Yeah, on TikTok. You going to dance with your little notebooks?" Mum gave him a half-hearted look, but she was already smirking. "I'm serious," I said, feeling my cheeks heat up. "I've been selling my designs on Etsy for months. I made almost $2,000 last month while studying and working at the cafe. If I can put more time into it, grow it properly." Dad finally looked up. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, leaned back in his chair, and laughed. Not a chuckle. A full-body, head-thrown-back laugh. $2,000, he repeated. "That's pocket money, Mia. You think you're going to build some empire out of drawing little calendars?" My fork clinked against the plate. "It's not just calendars. It's branding. It's systems. I've been running the store like a hobby, but it could be—" "Mia." Mum cut in, doing that soft voice thing she used when she was about to say something awful framed as concern. "We're proud of you for trying, but you need something stable. You can't live off dreams. You should do teaching or accounting like your father. Something solid." Luke leaned over, voice dripping sarcasm. "Yeah, then when your little side hustle tanks, you won't be back here crying about rent." They laughed. All three of them. The sound landed on me like a weight. I felt my throat tighten, that mix of rage and humiliation that makes your eyes sting. "You said you'd help with my HECS if I studied." I managed. "You said you wanted me to go to uni." "Uni, not whatever that is," Dad said, gesturing vaguely with his fork. "Business diplomas and online shops. It's a fad. I'm not pouring money into that." Mum nodded. We just don't want you to throw your future away chasing some fantasy. We know better, sweetheart. We've lived it. The subtext was clear. They knew what reality was. I did not. I went to my room that night, shut the door, and cried so hard my eyes swelled shut. Then, around 2 a.m., when the house was quiet and the shame ebbed enough for me to think, I opened my laptop. I pulled up my Etsy dashboard, my Instagram insights, my messy spreadsheets of expenses and revenue. I stared at the numbers. 430 pounds here, 780 pounds there, spikes whenever a reel went semi-viral. For them, it was a hobby. For me, it was the first thing in my life that made sense. So I made a decision. If they wouldn't back me, I'd back myself. The next few years were honestly brutal. Not in a glamorous, hustle, rise and grind way. In a cry on the walk home from my second shift because my feet hurt and my brain is fried and I still have to pack orders way. I moved out 6 months after that dinner. Mom cried and told everyone I was abandoning the family. Dad said, "You'll be back when the real world kicks your arse." Luke posted a meme in the family chat about wannabe girl bosses. I rented a moldy room in a share house with 2 girls I found on Facebook Marketplace and a bathroom that permanently smelled like damp towels. I worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the cafe, then came home, napped, and spent the rest of the afternoon drawing designs, answering customer messages, filming content. I studied too. I couldn't afford the fancy university program, so I pieced together my own bootleg degree. Free online courses, $30 Udemy classes, YouTube rabbit holes on SEO, and email funnels. I'd sit on my mattress with my laptop balanced on my knees, pausing lectures to scribble down ideas. The first year, I made just enough to stay afloat. The second year, something shifted. I designed this line of digital planners specifically for neurodivergent people, minimalist layouts, gentle prompts instead of guilt-trippy to-do lists, space for sensory notes. I posted a video about it on TikTok, speaking straight into the camera about how traditional productivity tools made me feel broken. I went to sleep with 3,000 followers. I woke up with 120,000 and a notification that my Etsy shop had high-volume traffic. My phone kept buzzing until I turned it face down. I had 700 orders in 24 hours. I panicked and cried in the kitchen while my housemate just hugged me and said, "This is good panic. Shut up and let me help you." We spent that weekend printing stickers and templates, answering emails, building a basic Shopify site because Etsy was taking too big a cut. That month, the business cleared more than I made in 6 months at the cafe. I quit the cafe job 3 months later. My manager hugged me and said, "Don't forget us when you're rich." I laughed and said, "As if." 3 years after that awful spaghetti dinner, I registered my company. 2 more years and I had an actual team, 3 part-time employees, a VA in the Philippines, a warehouse space. I launched courses, then a membership, then a collaboration with a mental health app. My accountant, not my father, to his eternal disappointment, sat me down one day and said, "You do realize you're technically a millionaire now, right?" I blinked at him. "Like on paper?" "On paper and in your accounts," he said, spinning the laptop toward me so I could see the neatly organized breakdown of assets, investments, and savings. I'd recommend setting up a trust. Also, maybe buying yourself something that isn't from Kmart as a treat. I bought myself a tiny terrace house with peeling paint and a courtyard full of weeds. I renovated the office first. Priorities. During all of this, my family remained complicated. They followed my business accounts, I know that now. Every so often, Mom would text me something like, "Saw your little page, looks cute X," or "Your cousin needs a job, can you hire him for admin?" There were no apologies, no admissions of, "Hey, we were incredibly dismissive of your dreams," and that was cruel. Just this weird, passive shift into treating my success like some inevitable thing they'd always supported. At Christmas, Mom would introduce me to her friends as our Mia. She's got her own company, you know. Always been so creative. I'd stand there with my paper plate of potato salad, smiling politely while remembering her telling me I couldn't live off dreams. I kept my distance. Low contact. Short visits, no big updates, no money. Then my grandmother died. Nana had been the one person who, when I showed her my first planner prototype, patted my hand and said, "People are tired, love. If you can make their days feel lighter, they'll pay you for it. Don't listen to your father. He wanted to be a musician once." Her funeral was a mess of cheap flowers and real grief. After the service, we all went to this function room above a pub. Beige carpet, cold sausage rolls, men in suits loosening their ties. And there, in front of my entire extended family, is where my parents finally tried to rewrite history. Uncle Rob, already a drinkin', clapped me on the back. "So, Miss Millionaire," he boomed. "When are we all getting a cut?" Mum laughed that too loud laugh. "Oh, don't encourage her. She already spoils herself. She's worked so hard, haven't you, darling?" I looked at her. Really looked. At the way she rested on that last sentence like it was proof she'd always believed in me. "Yeah," I said slowly. "I have." Dad chimed in. "We always knew she had it in her. Remember, Pat? She was always talking about those business ideas at the dinner table." Something in me snapped, not wildly, not dramatically. More like a branch that's been bending too long finally giving way. "You always knew?" I repeated, and my voice must have carried, because a few people nearby went quiet. "Is that what we're going with?" Mum shot me a warning look.
Mia.
"No, I'm genuinely curious," I said, heart pounding but oddly steady. Because my memory is of being told I was delusional, that my little shop was a phase, that you wouldn't support my study because it wasn't real. You laughed at me. All of you. Luke, who'd been loitering nearby, rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, no one meant it like that. It was a joke." "Jokes don't make people move out at 19 with $300 in their account," I said. "Jokes don't replay in your head when you're working double shifts wondering if you're actually insane for believing in yourself." There it was. Silence. Real silence. Uncle Rob shifted. Mum's eyes went glassy, but not with remorse, with embarrassment. Dad's jaw tightened. "You've done well," he said stiffly. "Isn't that enough? Why dig up old stuff?" "Because you're standing at Nan's funeral taking credit for something you tried to crush," I said, quieter now. "Because every time you tell this edited version of the story, it erases what it cost me to get here. And I'm tired." Later that night, after the awkward goodbyes and the drive back to my place, I sat at my dining table. Oak, solid, bought with my own money, and made another decision. If they wanted to see what my delusional dream had turned into, they could see it on my terms. Which is how we ended up tonight, at that fancy restaurant, all of us squeezed around one long table to celebrate your big business thing, as Mum put it. She meant the fact I'd just been featured in a national magazine as one of their top 30 under 30 entrepreneurs. The food came out in courses small enough to make my uncles mutter. The wine flowed, and gradually the initial stiffness melted into loud conversation. People kept making little jokes about me, shouting since I was the rich one now. I took it all in, cheeks warm, fingers tapping against my glass. When the bill came, the waiter hovered near Dad out of habit, middle-aged man, patriarch energy, obviously the one paying. Dad laughed at the number on the page. "Should have ordered the kids' menu," he joked. That's when I reached over and took it. That's when I said the line about my fortune. Mum fussed. "You really don't have to, Mia." "I know I don't," I said. "I want to. I can." Our eyes met. For the first time, I saw it clearly in hers. Not just pride, not just discomfort, regret. After everyone drifted out into the cool night air and we were waiting for Ubers, Mum pulled me aside. "We're proud of you, you know," she said, voice wobbly. "We always were, even if we didn't say it right." "You didn't say it at all," I replied. "Not cruel, just honest." "You mocked it." She swallowed. "We were scared. Money's always been tight. When you started talking about businesses and brands, it sounded like gambling to us. We wanted you safe. We handled it badly." I let that sit. Badly was doing a lot of heavy lifting there. "I believe you were scared," I said finally. "But you don't get to rewrite it to 'we always believed' just because it worked out. I built this by myself." You can be proud of me now. You can support me now. But you don't get to pretend you were cheering in the cheap seats the whole time. Her eyes filled. Is there any way we can fix it? I thought of Nana's warm kitchen, Jess's cramped share house, my accountant's office. All the places I'd cobbled together my own belief, while theirs was missing. I don't know, I said honestly. But this is a start. Telling the truth. That was the night I realized something important. I didn't actually want revenge in the cartoon villain sense. I didn't want them groveling at my feet. I just wanted them to stop acting like I'd achieved all this with their blessing when they'd been the chorus of doubt in my head for years. Still, I'd be lying if I said picking up that bill and watching their faces wasn't deeply satisfying. And that's where I thought the story ended. Sliding into commentator mode here, because these people are a whole ensemble. First off, Mia is the kind of main character Reddit loves. Not perfect, not some overnight girl boss caricature, but stubborn enough to keep going even when the people who are supposed to clap are actively booing from the front row. What I like about her is she doesn't pretend it didn't hurt. She cries, doubts herself, still checks her spreadsheets at 2 a.m. She doesn't turn into an ice queen. She turns into someone who builds scaffolding around herself when her family won't. The parents are painfully realistic. They're not mustache-twirling villains. They're scared, working-class people who think stable equals safe, and anything outside their template smells like disaster. Instead of owning their fear, they mask it with mockery. That's the bit that stings. They don't just say, "We're worried." They turn her dream into a punchline at dinner. Years later, they want the Instagram version of events. We always knew she'd make it. Of course they do. Who wants to remember themselves as the chorus of doubt? Luke is every sibling who's internalized the parents' worldview and weaponized it as just jokes. He's not driving the car, but he's absolutely throwing rocks from the back seat. And then there's that restaurant scene. Honestly, chef's kiss. The Bill moment isn't about the money. It's about narrative control. For once, Mia is the one casually saying, "I've got this," while everyone else scrambles to catch up to reality. That quiet, controlled flex is so much more powerful than any screaming match. Anyway, you just know life isn't done with them yet. Cue the update. Update, 10 months later. Hey, it's Mia again. A bunch of people asked for an update in my head anyway, and since life decided to get dramatic again, here we are. After the restaurant night, things settled into a weird, tentative truce. My parents were softer. A little less jokey, a little more curious. Mum started messaging me asking genuine questions about my work. What does a launch actually mean? How do you know people will buy before you make everything? Sometimes her questions were still framed in low-key anxiety, but at least she was listening without mocking. Dad was slower. He mostly stuck to safe topics, football, the weather, my car. But every now and then he'd slip in a small acknowledgement. One afternoon when I was over fixing their Wi-Fi, some things never change. He pointed at my laptop wallpaper, a photo of my office team in our silly Christmas jumpers, and said, "You pay all those people?" "Yeah," I said. "They're on payroll." He grunted, eyes flicking over the screen. "Big responsibility." "It is," I replied. "I'm good at it." He didn't argue. That, from him, felt like a groundbreaking ceremony for a new emotional building. Then in March, he had a heart attack. It wasn't a huge one, thank God, but it was big enough to scare everyone. I got the call while I was in a Zoom meeting with my developer, and 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a hospital corridor, the antiseptic smell weirdly comforting because at least here there were people who knew what to do. Mom was white-faced and jittery. Luke paced with his phone, already updating the family group chat. Dad was in a bed on the ward, attached to beeping machines, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Later that week, when we sat at their kitchen table wading through paperwork and pamphlets, the real fun started. "There's the gap payment for the angiogram," Mum said, voice tight. "And the medication. And he'll be off work for a while. I don't know how we're going to manage the mortgage and everything else." I could feel it before she even said it. The way her eyes slid toward me, hesitated, slid back. "I hate to ask," she began, "but maybe you could help?" Just for a while.
Alone. We'd pay you back when things settle. My stomach did this complicated lurch. On one hand, I loved my parents. Whatever their emotional shortcomings, they'd kept us housed and fed. On the other hand, I could hear the ghost of 19-year-old me whispering, "They wouldn't risk a cent on you, remember?" "I can help," I said slowly. "But not as a loan. And not without some boundaries." Mum blinked. "What do you mean?" I pulled out a notebook of my own design because, of course, and wrote down some numbers. "I can cover the medical gaps and 6 months of mortgage payments," I said. "That gives Dad time to recover without you panicking about losing the house. I'm happy to do that. But I'm not becoming your default bank. I'm not paying off credit cards or funding holidays. And I need you to understand this isn't me swooping in as the golden child you suddenly discovered." She flushed. "We never said you were." "You did," I said gently, in reverse. "You told me Luke was the sensible one, the one who'd go far. You told me I was unrealistic. I'm not bringing this up to punish you. I'm bringing it up because if I'm going to support you now, I need reality on the table with the bills." There was a long, painful silence. Luke, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. "She's not wrong, Mum." We both stared at him. "You lot used to take the piss out of her constantly," he continued, staring at the table. "I did too. I thought this business stuff was a joke. Then I saw her bloody warehouse and realized she wasn't mucking around.
She doesn't owe you, you know.
She's choosing this." Mum's eyes filled. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and for the first time, it landed differently. Less like social lubrication, more like an actual admission. "We were wrong. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. Instead, I became the disappointment." My throat tightened. I hadn't come for this. I came thinking we'd talk numbers, not feelings. "We all did our best with what we knew," I said, tears pricking. "But I need you to know that my success isn't a fluke or luck. It's years of work you didn't see. You don't have to grovel. You just have to stop acting like it's some cute surprise." She nodded, tears dripping off her chin. "I'll sign whatever you need. And I'll stop telling people we always pushed you to follow your dreams."
"Thank you," I said.
"That's worth more to me than the repayments would be anyway." We drafted a simple agreement, nothing dramatic, just clear. I paid the hospital gaps and set up automatic transfers for the mortgage. I also booked them in with a financial counselor I trusted. If I was going to be part of this, we were doing it in a way that didn't just put duct tape over a leaking boat. When Dad was well enough, I had a version of the same conversation with him. He was gruffer, more defensive. But when I said, "I'm doing this because I love you, not because you're entitled," he went quiet for a long time. "I didn't know how to dream small enough to match my fear," he said finally, staring at his hands. "So, when you started dreaming big, I panicked." "Doesn't excuse it. Just explains it." "That helps," I said. And it did. The weirdest turn, though, has been with Luke. Remember Luke, the king of "how's the little shop going" jokes? He called me a few months after Dad's heart attack and asked if we could grab coffee. "I've been thinking I might want out of my job," he said, fiddling with his cup. "The construction company's a mess, and I'm going nowhere. I keep thinking about what you did. Building something. Being your own boss." Old me would have heard that and braced for a job request. New me asked, "What do you actually like doing when no one's watching?" We talked for hours. Turns out my sensible brother has been teaching himself video editing in his spare time, making little short films and fan trailers. He lit up when he talked about cuts and transitions.
"So go do that," I said. He scoffed.
"Easy for you to say, Miss Millionaire." "Do you remember," I asked, "how hard you all laughed when I said I wanted to do my business? That's how you sound about yourself right now." He stared at me, cheeks reddening.
"Ouch."
"Yeah," I said. "Maybe don't be the voice that almost stopped me in your own head." A month later, he messaged me a link to his new freelance page. It was rough, but not hopeless. I helped him with some branding, gave him notes on his copy, sent him a couple of contacts in my network who needed editors. I told him flat out I wasn't handing him clients on a silver plate, but I'd show him where the dining room was. So, where are we now? Dad's doing cardiac rehab and has become that annoying guy who lectures everyone about salt. Mom is in a budgeting Facebook group and occasionally messages me phrases like sinking funds with 14 question marks. Luke is slowly shifting from building sites to editing suites.
And me?
My business is bigger than ever, but the thing I'm proudest of isn't the revenue or the magazine features. It's the fact that when my family needed help, I could show up without shrinking. I could write big checks without erasing the history that made them possible. My fortune didn't just make them eat their words. It forced them to chew on them long enough to taste what they'd actually been saying. And this time, when they talk about my dreams, they do it with their mouths full of humble pie. Time for the full cast roast/toast. Mia, she's the blueprint for success is the best clapback, but only if you remember where you started. What makes her satisfying isn't the money, it's the way she insists on reality being spoken out loud. She doesn't let her parents hide behind "we always knew" or "we were just joking." Every time they try to sand down the rough edges of the past, she gently but firmly slaps the sandpaper out of their hands. She pays their mortgage, yes, but she also charges an emotional interest rate. Honesty. That's not petty. That's self-respect with good boundaries and a decent accountant. Mum. Classic anxious dream killer disguised as a practical parent. Her biggest crime isn't thinking entrepreneurship is risky. It's laughing at her kid in the moment the kid needed belief most. But she also does something a lot of parents in these stories never do. She actually apologizes in a way that costs her something. Admitting, "I became the disappointment" is not small. She goes from "we always supported you" revisionism to "I'll stop saying that," which in parent language is basically a full-on retraction. She's flawed, but she's not hopeless, and that nuance matters. Dad. He's the guy who had his own dreams crushed and decided that meant crushing everyone else's was realistic. He weaponizes his fear as authority. I know better, I've lived it. The satisfying arc with him is subtle. No big grand apology, but quiet concessions. The man who once mocked her for drawing calendars ends up humbled by the spreadsheet where she pays his mortgage. When he says, "I didn't know how to dream small enough to match my fear," that's the closest thing to emotional poetry he's ever produced. It doesn't erase the damage, but it finally puts the blame where it belongs. On his fear, not on her dreams. Luke. Honestly, Luke surprised me the most. He starts as background bully number 1, echoing parental mockery on the sibling frequency. But he's also the first to say, "She doesn't owe you." That pivot from snarky sidekick to actual ally is huge. And the fact that Mia helps him with his own creative pivot without turning it into a power trip? That's generational curse-breaking energy. Big picture, this isn't one of those cut the entire family off forever and buy a mansion stories, though those are fun. This is messier and more mature. The person who is underestimated becomes the one holding the safety net and the mirror. She doesn't drop them. She makes them look. The revenge isn't that they're starving and she's feasting. The revenge is that she built the feast out of ingredients they said were worthless, and now, if they want a seat at her table, they have to admit they were wrong about the recipe.